Hello everyone, I'm Tracy Derwin, and in today's video, I'm going to be making a very interesting connection between Epstein and an ancient civilization that existed many, many years ago. And so this video is not going to be like a lot of the other videos about, who Epstein was. There are many creators that have made videos on that, and I'm sure many of you have already seen those. So this is something I haven't really heard of recently, and the information that I got this from is from a channel called Robert Sepper, and I'll link those videos in the description. He's my new favorite channel, and he's got really amazing content, but I'll kind of sum it up in this video. Okay, so the group that I'm talking about are the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians existed, let me see, between 1100 and 200 BC, so before Christ, before Islam, and they existed, or they lived in the area that is now Lebanon, Syria, and Israel. Now, if you have seen the thumbnail, the connection I was able to make is because of these structures. So Epstein had this temple on Little St. James Island, and it's very, very similar to this bathhouse in Aleppo, Syria. This was built in, I think, right around 1400. I don't know what they use it for now, but it was initially built as a public bathhouse. Okay, and then I'm going to also let Robert explain the connection between the Phoenicians and the Venetians. So these are two, they sound similar. The Venetians did business out of what is now Venice, Italy.
Starting around the time of the 12th century in Europe, around the Adriatic Sea, which is a body of water separating the Italian peninsula from the Balkans, arose a powerful influence called the Venetians, after the city of Venice, who they themselves traced their lineage back to the city of Tyre on the coast of the eastern Mediterranean, which was the capital city of the Phoenician Empire. These people could be called Canaanites, a term which comes from Canaan, who according to the Bible was a son of Ham. Ham was a son of Noah, and the father of Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. Many people hear these terms and incorrectly associate them with sub-Saharan Africans because they're associated with African civilizations and are today populated by a demographic primarily composed of a black phenotype. But keep in mind that we're talking about thousands of years ago, not modern times, but ancient kingdoms which no longer resemble the ancient kingdoms described in the Old Testament.
So I believe that is where Epstein was getting his influence or his inspiration, because looking at what that island had, it does Venetians. Another thing that's connected is the sundial. This is on the Epstein Island. This sundial with like the face and the sun was used in Venetian culture pretty regularly. All right, and here I'll just show some drone footage of the temple, and even down to the palm trees. It looks very similar to what the Phoenicians made. And now that dome is no longer there, I don't think it's being maintained anymore. But I found this next clip to be really, it really changed my mind and made me realize that what's going on today, not just with Epstein, but in world culture, is very similar to what happened many, many years ago. So the Venetians, I think I put this up, they started around like right before 700 AD, and their empire went to almost 1800. So they did exist for a long time, and they were very dominant in the Mediterranean with trade and business. Now, here is another clip from Robert Sepper, and this is a kind of summary of the Venetian way of doing business.
The Venetians are very good at psychological warfare as well. That if you read Friedrich Schiller's Ghost Seer, you can see that what you do is you pretend to be people's friends. You find out what they want, what their weakness is, and you give it to them. If they want money, you give them money. If they want sex, you arrange for that. If they want drugs, you arrange for that. Whatever it is they want, their weakness is, you feed them. And then you tell them, okay, I'm doing all this for you and I just need these little favors. And you corrupt them. And you corrupt them until you can control them. And of course, you know what they're doing, so you can always blackmail them if they try to get out of line. But basically what controls them is the knowledge that if they don't go along with you, then they lose out on all these things they like. You know, if they play ball with you, then they become rich, they become famous, they have all of their desires sated, they get everything that they want, but in a mental state which is increasingly depraved and subject to manipulation. And that's also the Venetian method, that you win by corruption. And that the thing that the empire fears most of all is an honest man who isn't corruptible because he doesn't want those things.
With their reassurance of complete maritime dominance, the Venetian oligarchy used their power over the Mediterranean to internationally centralize the control and organization of money within their financial empire. Thus, no country could produce bullion for its own use, and all currency exchange had to take place in Venice.
They are lending money to the major houses of Europe, the nations, or what passed for nations at that point, the kingdom, various kingdoms and duchies and things like that. And so they get them into debt. Now, for example, the King of England was in significant debt to the Lombard bankers, which were the Venetian banking system, and in particular to the House of Bardi. And so the king, pledged as collateral the wool production of his kingdom. And then, of course, he's going broke, and so he needs more money, so he borrows more money, and then he pledges all of the sheep as well. The key thing about this kind of debt farming, is that once you incur a debt, the debt never really goes away. Because the interest rates that you have to pay, the money that you have to pay to service this debt, is such that you quit building your country and you start trying to pay your debt. And then you have to borrow more money to pay your debt because you get further behind, and then your interest rates get higher, your debt service becomes more, and you set off on a process that never really ends until everything blows up. But that's the Venetian method of control. And that method has not changed since the days of Venice.
The oligarchy proceeded to move north in search of a new capital from which to operate. They settled throughout Northern Europe, opening their first major headquarters in Amsterdam, Holland. Centuries later, they consolidated their true base in 1763, upholding their public political headquarters in London, which remains still today.
So I think this is the basis for where these ideas came from. The blackmail, giving your friends what they want. And I think it even lends into what Diddy was doing. I think that's the main thing. There is more connections, but it's just a little too explicit to put here. But in Robert's videos, he'll explain it. And I'm just kind of not comfortable talking about some of those things, but it goes into more detail of exactly how Epstein was, I guess, getting his inspiration, or getting that edge that he needed to succeed the way he did, because he wasn't just an ordinary asset right? He's probably one of the most successful. He amassed one of the biggest fortunes and probably had the most, the richest, most influential people, under his hand. And I think this is exactly how he did that. And I just thought it was very significant, and I wanted to share it since there's been so much talk about him. And I think it is important that we continue to talk about this, because if not, we'll never publicly know, exactly what was going on and who was involved. But I do believe this type of practice is controlling what we're seeing today in many different aspects of life. So yeah, I think that's going to do it. I hope you found this video helpful, and I will see you all soon. Bye.